Bank of England warns of an imminent recession spanning over 2 years, the longest period of economic decline ever to be recorded, as it raises interest rates to the highest levels seen in 33 years. This comes as a warning that the UK would face an extremely challenging 2-year slump, with unemployment reaching levels of doubling by 2025. The Bank of England boss Andrew Bailey warned of a tough road ahead for UK households, but said it had to act forcefully now to prevent them from getting worse later on. The bank has lifted interest rates by a staggering 75 basis points to a 3% overall, shooting up the cost of borrowing. The increase in interest rates comes as an attempt to bring down the soaring cost of living increases as inflation surges at the fastest rate in 40 years. When interest rates are lower than inflation, people and companies are incentivized to borrow more, as the money becomes cheaper to pay back in the future when inflation would have eaten away at the purchasing power of the money in the beginning. This is what it is meant when you hear that the cost of borrowing money is low. When interest rates are increased, even by tiny amounts, borrowing becomes much more expensive. This affects people's credit card loans and mortgages, making them want to spend less. With less spending in an economy, prices tend to fall, bringing down inflation. However, with lower consumer spending, businesses take in less cash and therefore must let some employees go, increasing unemployment. Food and energy prices have jumped in part because of the Ukraine war, which has left many households facing hardship and started to weigh in on the economy. A recession is defined as when the country's economy shrinks for 2 consecutive 3-month periods or quarters. During a recession, typically companies make less money. Their pay falls and unemployment rises. This means that the government receives less money in tax to use on public services such as health and education. The Bank of England had previously expected the UK to fall into recession at the end of this year and said it would last for all next year. But now the bank believes the economy had already entered a challenging downturn during this summer, which will continue into next year and for the first half of 2024, when the next general election is expected. While this may not be the UK's deepest downturn, it will be the longest since records began in the 1920s. The unemployment rate is currently at its lowest for 50 years, but it is expected to rise to nearly 6.5%. This interest rate announcement is the first since former Prime Minister Liz Truss and former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng unveiled their controversial mini-budget in September, which many attribute to the fall in trust for the UK economic scene. Liz and Kwasi's plans for £45 billion worth of unfunded tax cuts, much of which has been reversed now, sent the value of the pound tumbling and sparked market turmoil, forcing the Bank of England to intervene and restore the markets. The Bank of England boss had previously said that the mini-budget had damaged the UK's standing internationally. Current Chancellor Jeremy Hunt said that the most important thing the British government can do right now is to restore the stability, sort out the public finances, and get debt falling so that interest rate rises are kept as low as possible. So what could this 2-year recession look like? The longest length of historical economic decline in the UK is not going to be a pretty scene. For one, many people are going to lose their incomes. An uncomfortably high portion of the UK's population lives paycheck to paycheck without any sort of emergency fund, meaning that they could be unable to pay their rent or mortgage and face homelessness. What's even worse is that on top of living paycheck to paycheck, many of the younger population have copious amount of debt which they will not afford to pay back, one in part due to the rise of interest rates and the other due to loss of income. The loss of jobs will mean that consumer spending will hit new lows and businesses will be forced to either increase prices or let workers go. Because increasing prices during a recession will only lower demand, that would not be a viable option, thus creating masses of unemployment throughout the country. With growing unemployment, households will be unable to pay for bills and luxuries such as certain branded food products, meaning that the country will go into a depression and crime rates would be expected to increase. There will generally be a bleak feeling in the air and trust between individuals will be at an all-time low. The stock market is expected to fall in response to rising interest rates, lower incomes, and mass sell-offs as people sell their shares to pay for essential items. Investment horizons for positive gains are going to feel never-ending, and there may even be a long flatline or decline in all your investments. Those with mortgages will feel the brunt of the recession. The Bank of England forecasts that if interest rates keep continuing to rise, those with fixed rate deals coming to an end could see their annual payments soar by over £3,000. As mortgages become more and more unaffordable, many will be forced to sell their homes or even have them repossessed, driving down the prices of homes and possibly causing a housing market crash. This will see investment property yields fall and some landlords making more losses than profits. The 2 years could prove to be a very uncomfortable time for many, where countless difficult financial decisions will need to be made. But you can weather through this recession and appear stronger on the other end. By reducing your expenses and saving cash reserves for emergencies, you can be in a better position to respond to the uncertain future. And if you can, invest the extra cash, because after the recession will come an extended period of growth where interest rates fall again and everyone will be partying like there is no tomorrow.